Looking for a dime. James Locke in the house, gonna help you shine.
Welcome to the Poole Locke YouTube channel. I'm James Locke. Today we're going to answer two more Ask James questions of the day. First question, Dorothy. She says, my husband is an engineer. I'm really looking forward to him retiring in a few years from now. He's managing our money, and as we get closer to retirement, I'm worried he's going to make mistakes that will cost us in the long run. Do you have any advice on how I can help him? All right, Dorothy, your husband is an engineer, so I assume he probably takes pride in being rational. Engineers are trained to solve problems methodically, to analyze data, and to make calculated decisions. But you know, it's interesting. We actually have a psychological profile that we give to all our employees here that evaluates them on certain levels. And one thing is, do you make decisions logically or emotionally? So if you're like a 10 logic, it means you're the most logical. Now I happen to be a 9 logic, so I'm way up there, right? But as it turns out, I still catch myself sometimes making emotional decisions. Even if I'm buying a car, it's like, what's the reasonable, practical car versus which is the one that I really want? Even being a pilot, right? So I know a pilot, part of our group at Sound Income Strategies, and the airplane that he flies to fly all around the country to all the different offices is pretty inexpensive as far as airplanes go in order to run, right? But if you want to make the logical decision, right? Well, it's always cheaper to fly commercial, right? But sometimes he likes to fly himself because he wants that flexibility, right? And it's an emotional decision. It's important to him, right? Now it's important to us because he supports everyone around the country, right? It helps us, but it's important to him, right? The point is, we're all human, and even the most analytical minds can fall victim to emotional biases, especially when it comes to money that represents decades of hard work and sacrifice. So I think the most important thing, if he manages the money, is for you to stay in the loop. Stay in the loop and understand, and hopefully have the relationship with him that you can simply say, look, I just want to know what's going on. I want to be here for you. This isn't about questioning his competence or challenging his authority over the finances. It's about being a team and making sure you're both aligned on your retirement goals and the strategy to get there. You need to know on top of that, because God forbid if something happens to him, you need to know what's happening. You can't just have one person managing it. I've seen too many situations where one spouse passes away or becomes incapacitated and the surviving spouse is completely in the dark about their financial situation. That's not a position you want to be in, especially during an already difficult time. That's one of my goals. When I sit with people all the time and one spouse is managing the money and the other one isn't. Because if you know what's happening and the rationale, then you can keep him from making emotional decisions. If there's something that you see, the market's going up, or in this case, technology, right? And he's going heavier and heavier in technology, you could be that voice of reason to say, wait a minute, what about diversification? What about the income component of our portfolio? Are we positioned to generate the steady cash flow we'll need in retirement? Or are we still chasing growth when we should be focusing on income? And I know, it's your money as much as his, so you're emotionally attached to it. But again, because this is your concern, you might just be able to be that voice of reason and rationale. Sometimes having that second set of eyes, that partner who asks the questions, can prevent costly mistakes that happen when someone gets too emotionally invested in a particular strategy or too caught up in the momentum of the market. Now here's something specific to think about as you approach retirement. Is your portfolio structured for your income generation, or is it still structured for growth, right? Because it's a critical transition that needs to happen. If your husband has been focused on accumulation his whole career, and most engineers love watching that number grow, he might be reluctant to shift gears into an income-first strategy. But that shift is essential. You want investments that are producing dividends and interest, that renewable resource we talk about, rather than relying on selling assets and hoping the market cooperates when you need the money. Now, the other choice is to get a financial advisor to work with. And again, some financial advisors, now we don't do it, but some financial advisors will even do an hourly consultant, right? Here's our fee. And then you go to them and you get feedback. And that might be helpful too. It might be a good investment, a good checks and balance system, because again, you're in that final descent coming in, ready to land in retirement, and you want to make sure that your gears are down, not up when you land. A financial advisor who specializes in retirement income planning, can provide that objective third-party perspective and help you both understand whether your portfolio is truly positioned to support the retirement lifestyle you're dreaming of. They can run projections, stress test your plan against different scenarios, and most importantly, help facilitate those important conversations between you and your husband about risk, income needs, and spending in retirement. So I hope that helps a little. The main thing is to approach this as a partnership. Stay informed. Don't be afraid to seek professional guidance as you make this critical transition from saving to spending, from growth to income. That's a great question. If you would like to send in your question, you can do so. You can email them to poolelock@poolelocke.com. Moving right along, we have our second question. And this question is from Ellen. She says, I'm someone that you mentioned who plans to retire on a lot less income than what I'm making during my working years, but my husband and I have done a really good job saving. So how can I convince him that it's going to be okay to spend in retirement to not live off such a small amount of income? That's a great question, right? So here, Ellen, you really want a permission slip, right? Or she wants to explain the permission slip of income to your husband, and he's afraid, right? And you have to understand that sometimes men, we take this man of the family thing on, and we're responsible for the family, and it's, if something goes wrong, it's on me. So it's easy to get a little ultra conservative and ultra cautious. That fear is real. And it comes from a protective instinct, right? But what we need to do is channel that protective instinct in the right direction, right? Not just protecting the principle, but protecting, your quality of life and your ability to enjoy the retirement you've worked so hard to build together. But I think the story is the residual income. I always have an analogy that I say, and if you had to heat your house for the rest of your life just based upon the trees, the wood, and the trees that are on your property, burning those trees, think about how stressed you would be, right? You'd have to figure out how many cords of wood you have and divide that by your life expectancy, and then maybe you assume that some of the trees might die or get knocked down from a hurricane. So you say, well, we can't even burn that much every year. And you'd figure out how much you could burn on a regular basis to heat your home, and it might cause you to only heat it to 55 or 60, right? Because you don't know how long you're going to live or how long the wood's going to last. So you're worried about it. You're calculating constantly calculating, and you're living in a cold house because you're afraid of running out. That's no way to live, especially after decades of hard work and saving. But imagine instead you lived off that renewable resource of, let's say solar or even wind. And you knew that every day you can kick it up to 80 degrees. You can heat the house as much as you want and not worry about it, because tomorrow there's going to be more solar power. There's going to be more wind power. That's like getting a permission slip to heat your house because it's not a finite resource. It's an infinite resource. It's a renewable resource. You're not depleting anything. You're simply harvesting what naturally replenishes itself day after day, month after month, year after year. So with that in mind, the same thing is true with your money. If you're thinking about your money as, gosh, I've got $3 million, we take $100,000 a year, that'll last me 30 years. You're thinking about, taking it out of principle. That mindset creates anxiety because you're always subtracting. You're always seeing that balance go down. When you start to realize that you can make the transition as you kind of get to retirement, get close to retirement, to an income first, growth second approach, where you're primarily looking for interest and dividends, that renewable resource, right? Now you can spend all of it with a clear conscience because you never have to worry about running out of money. Why? Because you're never touching the principal. And by definition, if you don't touch the principal, it's really hard to run out of money. In fact, what typically happens is that your principal actually continues to grow over time, even while you're living comfortably off the income it generates. So that's the best thing. And your husband might be more growth-oriented in his mind, more stock-oriented, so he might not be thinking interest and dividends. He's thinking about capital appreciation and total return, which would, work great during the accumulation phase of your lives. So if you can convince him to go to an income first, growth second approach, whatever amount of money you have, you multiply that by 4% a year, maybe 5%, and that's the amount of money you can generate, and that's what you could take with 100% clear conscience. You could structure your portfolio with dividend-paying stocks, bonds, real estate investment trusts, other income-generating assets that provide that steady, predictable cash flow. This isn't about being reckless. It's about being strategic and intentional with how your portfolio works for you in this new phase of life. I hope that helps. The key here is helping him see that you're not asking to be irresponsible with money. You're asking to be smart about how you use the wealth you've built together. You've done the hard part. You've saved diligently. Now it's time to let the money do what it was always meant to do, provide for you both so you can enjoy the retirement you've earned. Hey, two great questions. Thank you for that question. As always, if you'd like to send in your question, please do so. Email it to poollocke@poollocke.com. And if you like what you heard today, go ahead and like and subscribe to our channel. I'm James Locke, your retirement income source. I'll see you next time.
Money on my mind, looking for a dime. James Locke in the house, gonna help you shine. Retirement is near, don't you live in fear. Listen up, my friend, let me make it clear. Savings in the